Organized team activities today. And the big question is, will we see Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh? They have an offer on the table for the four-time MVP. Quarterback hasn't said if he's going to play next season. So the Steelers are rolling with Mason Rudolph, Skylar Thompson, and rookie Will Howard. That is for now. And that is when we bring in Jeff Darlington and Tim Hasselbeck to discuss things. And Jeff, all eyes, we know, quarterback room, just gave you the list. We know they've been pursuing Aaron Rodgers. Where does that stand?
Well, nowhere at this point. I can tell you this. With OTAs starting for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it will be Mason Rudolph taking those first-team reps while the team continues to wait for Aaron Rodgers. And I'll also add this. There is still a level of confidence within the Pittsburgh Steelers organization that Aaron Rodgers will eventually join the team. When that happens, still to be determined. If it actually happens, quite frankly, also still to be determined. The Steelers, though, continuing to hold out hope as we reach, quite frankly, late in this offseason in May, 100 days away from the regular season. Still no signs of Aaron Rodgers with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but still keep it in your afterthoughts, I guess, that Aaron Rodgers could wind up with Pittsburgh eventually.
Yeah, it just seems like Aaron's played a long time in this league, whether he was still in Green Bay or, as this kind of this free agent with an impending signing. Look, we're in May, and I think guys that are, quarterbacks that have been playing in the league for decades, they're in no real hurry. They'll show up at training camp, and yeah, it will be a new system, but he's been around long enough. So I think there's kind of confidence probably from Aaron's perspective that he doesn't need to be in a hurry. And I would even say probably from the team's perspective that they can feel that same way. So, Jeff, I just would agree with you. I don't think that the urgency that many fans and maybe even some other younger players feel, in early May, I don't think Aaron Rodgers or the Steelers necessarily feel that way. Look, would it be great to have him there? Sure. But is it a must-have this time of year? I think it's far from that.
Yeah, there's nobody to say he's not doing stuff off the field to prepare himself for an upcoming season, if in fact he's going to play, which, as Darlington alluded to, we don't know if he's even going to play football next year. Speaking of quarterback quandary, the Browns, they begin OTAs today. They've got 4 guys in their quarterback room. That, of course, includes Shedeur Sanders. That doesn't count the injured Deshaun Watson. So, Hasselbeck, what are the challenges that come with managing a quarterback room of that size?
Well, you want to give people the opportunity to compete and win a job. And I think that's the number one thing. People have to realize that you don't have gigantic roster sizes. So, typically a team period may be 12 to 14 reps. Well, you divide that by 4. It's not a lot of opportunity for the guys. No, in the same time, your head coach is really, coaching for his job. And so, when you just stack it up and say you've got a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Joe Flacco, a former first-round quarterback in Kenny Pickett, who was the backup to the Super Bowl winning champs a year ago and started games, he's ready to play, you would think. And then young prospects, one drafted earlier than the next, to give them all reps is difficult, which means, then you're concerned about, are they happy? Are they frustrated? What does that do to the dynamic of your quarterback room, which can ultimately impact the dynamic of your football team? So, look, it's a challenge. They're not the only ones dealing with it, but it does feel like the most unique one in the National Football League right now.
You're absolutely right. This is one of the more understated and complicated components to drafting multiple players and adding free agents. You have to find repetitions to create that competition. I've spoken to a number of teams who said, yeah, we would love to add quarterbacks in the draft to see if you can sort of hit on one in one of those later rounds. But this is the complication when you do that. Suddenly you do have Gabriel and Sanders joining a competition and really not getting the reps perhaps necessary for a rookie to not only win the job, but also understand the offense. So it is a complicated component facing the Browns, one they will continue to try to work through by splitting up reps until someone earns that job. But I do not anticipate, based on my conversations, that they will make any type of decision about distributing reps outside of evenly at this point for the Browns.
And you look at that list, I mean, Flacco's a veteran. Kenny Pickett's been there before. So if you really wanted to take a look at both of these rookie quarterbacks, Gabriel, a third-rounder, we know Shedeur went in the 5th. OTAs and minicamp might be a good time to do that before we arrive at training camp in July. We'll arrive back with you gentlemen in just only 100 days until the opener. So players gearing up for OTAs, and we are keeping it 100. Jeff Darlington and Tim Hasselbeck. I initially fought against this segment because I'm against countdowns to football season because I want to enjoy my summer, but here we are. It's 100 days. It's a nice, clean number, so we're going to play along. Tim, we're going to give you benchmarks, and each of you get to answer the question. We're going to start with you. Who will be the quarterback with 100 completions first?
I'm going with Tua Tagovailoa, and partly because just the style of their offense. They get the ball out quickly. They obviously, have really talented wide receivers is the reason they do it. And you go back 2 years ago, Tua had 560 completions. He's usually one of these guys that kind of hovers right around 70% completion percentage. So I guess this is outside the box a little bit, but I think Tua is going to get there because of that style of offense.
Yeah, Tim, I'm going to use a similar rationale when I say Jared Goff will be the first one to get to 100 completions. They don't have Ben Johnson, so it'll be interesting to see how this offense evolves. But I do think that Jared, in general, is very capable of getting the ball out quick, getting completions. He has targets that he is comfortable with. Now, will he have the type of game where he had 18 consecutive completions in Week 4 to help kind of get him there faster? That's not an easy feat, but he is the type of player who will complete a lot of passes every game. I think that he gets to 100 first.
Slight edge to Hasselbeck, slight edge, but I think they're both great picks. Darlington, you're starting this one. Who's going to be the first wide receiver with 100 catches?
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here and say Malik Neighbors. And I understand that might not be the obvious choice, but he is a player who got there so fast as a rookie. And I think that he is going to continue to grow and evolve, especially with a new experienced quarterback under center for him. So I get it. It's probably not the most conventional choice, but I do think Malik Neighbors has proven that he belongs in this league. He was probably the best rookie amongst a very deep class of wide receivers. And I think he's going to continue to grow next year as well.
And for me, I'm going Jamar Chase. I struggled when I'm looking at it and saying, look, you got to fight for opportunities. There's a good complementary, if not number one receiver opposite him. That being said, there's a contract year for the wide receivers in Cincinnati, and he still caught 127 balls. So, look, I think when it matters the most, when it's in crunch time, Joe Burrow is looking for Jamar Chase. And so one of the most talented guys in the league, I'm going to say that it's Chase.
Only 10 receivers last year in the league had 100 receptions. Both of those good choices. Hasselbeck, you're back up. Who's going to be the first running back, not carries, the first running back with 100 touches?
We're on Saquon Barkley. He touched the football over 370 times last year. And when you think about the change at offensive coordinator for the Eagles, you're under a lot of pressure. And one of the things you do when you're a lot of pressure is you just get the ball to your playmakers. Well, look, the reality is the playmaker in Philadelphia is Saquon Barkley. So I think they're going to feed him early and often. I don't think it's about saving him throughout the year. I think he's well over, 350 touches again this season.
Yeah, I could try to get cute here and disagree and try to pick someone else. For the sake of creativity, I just can't do it. Saquon Barkley is that guy. The Eagles found their recipe to success. They will not steer away from it. And quite frankly, maybe the fact that the tush push remains a legal play will reduce some of those touchdowns, but I don't think it reduces the number of touches. Saquon Barkley is still the first to get to 100.
Yeah, there's something obvious, and Saquon is obviously that one for that category. Darlington, sticking with you. Who's going to be the first player with 100 tackles?
Well, I'm going to go Zaire Franklin, who did it so effectively for the Colts last season. But the only reason I'm a little bit concerned about this is because of the injury that he's currently facing. We'll see if he can be healthy in time for the regular season. The team does expect him to be ready in time for training camp. He underwent a pretty minor cleanup during the offseason, but I think that Franklin will get back and be the guy to get to well over 100 tackles and be the first to do it this season.
Yeah, and I'm going Robert Spillane. Some of these, not household names necessarily when you get to this point, but Spillane has had, over 140 tackles each of the last 2 seasons. Talk to Antonio Pierce, and he would be the one to tell you, this is the guy that we wanted to build things around in Las Vegas. Guy's just a football player. Came into the league, undrafted, plays like a guy that came in undrafted with a chip on his shoulder. He's the kind of guy that, it's hard to get him off the field. He ends up in New England, and so I don't think it's a signing that necessarily gets everyone's attention. He's a New England guy, and Mike Vrabel kind of cut guy. I think he's going to be a dominant player in New England. I think we're going to see the tackles, rack up quickly for him.
Gentlemen, you gave this segment 100%. I want you to keep your calendars clean.
We did.
October 28th, Tuesday, October 28th, we're going to bring you back, and we're going to do a status report on all of these. So, Darlington, clear the schedule. Hasselbeck, you're free.
Yeah, you better believe it.
Hôm nay mình sẽ hướng dẫn các bạn cách làm một tấm lót cốc đơn giản từ len nhé. Nguyên liệu của mình đây nhá, mình sẽ sử dụng 3 màu sắc len như thế này để làm này. Màu đen này, màu xanh lá cây và màu trắng sẽ kết hợp lại với nhau nha. Và mình sẽ sử dụng kim móc len để làm. Kéo này. Rồi bây giờ sẽ bắt tay vào làm nha. Mình sẽ sử dụng cái phần len màu xanh trước đi, màu xanh trước nha. Giờ sẽ gỡ len ra. Đây, cái đầu len này. Đầu tiên thì mình sẽ móc một cái hình tròn nha mọi người. Đây, móc một cái hình tròn. Đây, bây giờ sẽ tiến hành móc vào nha mọi người. Đây, móc vào. Cứ từng mũi nửa kép một móc xuống, đến khi được hình tròn thì mình dừng nhá. Đây, mũi nửa kép như thế này. Mình tiếp tục mình móc những mũi nữa xuống. Mũi tiếp theo. Đấy, mình móc lần lượt xuống. Tiếp nha mọi người. Mũi nữa này. Đây, mình móc tiếp xuống, cứ lần lượt cho đến hết. Rồi, móc tiếp xuống nữa, cứ luân phiên cho đến hết. Móc lần lượt cho mình. Tiếp nha. Đây, mũi tiếp. Mũi nữa này. Bây giờ sẽ móc nối vào đây và siết dây. Rồi, được một cái hình tròn như thế này nhá. Giờ thì mình sẽ móc lên một cái hàng nữa đi. Móc một cái hàng nữa cũng bằng màu xanh nhé. Mình móc cho cái hình tròn này của mình nó rộng thêm ra ấy mọi người. Bây giờ sẽ móc tiếp. Bây giờ móc tiếp vào này. Mình sẽ móc xuống đây. Từng mũi một này. Mũi nửa kép. Tiếp tục móc này. Rồi bây giờ móc những mũi tiếp theo. Lần lượt cho đến hết. Tiếp nha mọi người. Đấy, mình móc xuống. Những mũi nữa cũng y như vậy nhé, để được những cái ô rỗng như thế này. Tiếp nha. Móc tiếp